When words stop flowing, silence takes their place. And silence, unlike arguments or explanations, doesn't soften the truth or make it easier to digest. Silence is a mirror. It reflects back to a man the reality of his actions, his choices, and his presence in your life. You see, when you're talking, explaining, reminding, or even pleading, he still has room to dismiss your words, to argue, or to convince himself that everything is fine. But when you stop talking, when the air between you grows still, he can no longer hide from the reflection. Silence shows him the weight of what's been broken. It shows him the distance that has formed. It shows him that something is no longer working. And here's the powerful part. Silence isn't about punishing him. It's not about playing games or holding back love to get attention. Silence is about holding up a mirror and saying without words, "Look, this is what your behavior has created. This is the space you've built between us. This is what it feels like to no longer have my energy, my effort, my voice pouring into this connection." Some men can't handle this reflection. They look into that mirror of silence, and instead of owning what they see, they turn away. They get angry, defensive, or they try to fill the silence with noise, calls, texts, excuses, even manipulation. But a man who is willing to grow will sit with it. He'll see himself clearly, maybe for the first time. He'll recognize the absence of your voice as not just quiet, but as truth. Because silence tells the story words sometimes can't. That you're done over explaining, that you're no longer willing to carry both sides of the relationship, that the space he feels is the result of choices he made. Silence becomes a mirror, and whether he looks into it with courage or hides from it in fear, reveals more about him than anything else ever could. When you stopped elking to a man, the very first thing he feels isn't always guilt, remorse, or understanding. It's the absence. The absence of your voice, your laughter, your check-ins, even the small, ordinary conversations that once filled his days. Here's the truth. Many men are not immediately aware of the depth of your presence until it's no longer there. When you were available, listening, encouraging, or even just existing quietly beside him, he may have taken it for granted. But when you step back and the room feels emptier, when the phone doesn't light up with your messages, when the rhythm of connection suddenly breaks, he notices. Absence has a way of echoing louder than words. It lingers in the quiet moments he once shared with you. It sneaks up on him when he's alone in his car or scrolling through his phone late at night. That's when the realization begins. Your presence was not just routine, it was meaningful, it mattered. But here's the important distinction. Noticing the absence doesn't always mean he understands it right away. At first, he might confuse that emptiness with discomfort. He might think, why does something feel off? Or even get frustrated, wondering why you've pulled back. The deeper truth takes time to sink in. He has to sit with that absence long enough to realize that what he misses isn't just conversation, it's connection, care, and energy that you gave freely. This is why silence is so powerful. Your withdrawal creates a pause that forces awareness. It shifts the spotlight. No longer is the focus on your effort to explain or fix things. Now the focus is on what happens when you stop. And in that space, he learns the most human lesson of all. We often don't recognize the value of someone's presence until we are faced with their absence. And if he truly values you, this absence won't just sting. It will stir something inside him. It will make him reflect on how he contributed to this silence and what he's willing to do to rebuild the bridge. Because a man will always notice when a woman who brought love, warmth, and life into his world no longer. When you stop talking to a man, his first instinct might not be self-reflection. Instead, it's often defense. Silence to him can feel like a wall, and instead of asking himself, why has this wall been built? His ego steps in and whispers, you don't deserve this. She's overreacting. She's being unfair. Defensiveness is a shield. It's his way of protecting himself from the discomfort of seeing his own role in the distance that has formed. When you pull back your words, your energy, your presence, it quietly confronts him with the truth. Something is broken. But facing that truth requires vulnerability. And for many men, vulnerability is uncomfortable, so they react instead of reflect. He might accuse you of playing games. He might say, "Why are you acting this way?" Or "You're making a big deal out of nothing." Sometimes he'll even try to flip the script, making you the problem so he doesn't have to look in the mirror. That's defensiveness. It's not about you. It's about his fear of what your silence is saying. But here's the deeper layer. Defensiveness is often the first crack before awareness. It means he feels the shift. He senses that something is different and it unsettles him. The man who lashes out when you go silent is revealing just how dependent he was on your presence, your forgiveness, your explanations. Without them, he doesn't know how to process the discomfort, so he hides behind blame or anger. This is why your silence is so powerful. It doesn't just create distance, it reveals character. Some men will stay locked in defense mode, never allowing themselves to dig deeper. But others, once that initial wave of resistance passes, will start to think. They'll begin to ask the questions that matter. Why did she stop talking? What part did I play? What am I afraid to face in myself? And that's the turning point. Defensiveness is a doorway for the row. Young man, it stays shut. For the right man, it eventually opens into honesty, accountability, and maybe even change. So if he becomes defensive at first, don't take it as proof that your silence was wasted. Sometimes defensiveness is just his fear speaking louder than his truth. And sometimes it's the first sign that your silence has already begun to do its work. After the noise of defensiveness quiets down, something powerful can begin to happen: reflection. This doesn't always come quickly, and not every man is willing to go there. But when silence lingers long enough, it creates space. And in that space, he no longer has your words to lean on, argue with, or dismiss. He only has himself. Reflection is uncomfortable because it demands honesty. It forces him to ask questions he may have avoided for months, maybe years. Why did she stop talking to me? What did I overlook, ignore, or take for granted? Was I really showing up the way I thought I was? This stage is where the silence shifts from being about you to being about him. Your withdrawal becomes a mirror, but instead of deflecting, he now begins to study his own reflection. And here's the beauty: reflection often grows in quiet. It's in the late night hours when the phone doesn't buzz, in the mornings when his day starts without your voice, in the moments when he notices that something essential is missing. That absence turns into awareness, and awareness opens the door to accountability. Not every man will take this path. Some will distract themselves, dive into work, bury themselves in noise so they don't have to face what silence is showing them. But a man who is capable of growth, who has even a spark of humility, will eventually let the reflection sink in. And when he does, he may realize that your silence wasn't rejection, it was revelation. It revealed the parts of him that need healing. It revealed the behaviors that chipped away at the bond between you. It revealed how much he relied on your constant presence to feel secure, instead of learning to contribute to that security himself. When you stop talking to a man, don't be surprised if his first reaction after the silence sinks in is not to reflect, but to test. Boundaries, after all, reveal themselves most clearly when they are enforced. And silence is one of the strongest boundaries you can ever set. At this stage, he may try to pull you back in, sometimes gently, sometimes manipulatively. He might send casual texts like, "Mom, hey, you okay?" or suddenly show interest in details of your life he ignored before. He may even test your silence with bait, saying things designed to spark a reaction, knowing that if you respond, the boundary has been softened. Other times, the testing comes in less subtle ways. He might try guilt. "So now you're just going to ignore me?" Or he'll play the victim. "I guess I don't matter to you anymore." These tactics are not always conscious, but they serve one purpose: to see if your silence is temporary or if it carries weight. Here's the thing, boundaries expose character. When you stop talking, a man who respects you will sense the change and approach with honesty. He may not fully understand at first, but he won't dismiss or belittle the boundary you've drawn. He'll step carefully, recognizing that your withdrawal is not random, it's a response to something real. But a man who cannot handle boundaries will push harder. He'll try to provoke you, pressure you, or minimize your silence until you break it. Why? Because your quiet is disrupting his comfort. Your boundary is forcing him to face a version of you he can't control. This is why silence is not just absence, it's a test. And how he responds tells you everything. If he respects your space, asks questions with humility, and seeks to understand, it shows that he is capable of meeting you with respect. But if he treats your silence like a challenge to overcome or a game to win, then what he's really revealing is inability to honor you. It's important to remember this. Your silence is not about teaching him a lesson. It's not a strategy to get a certain reaction. It's about honoring yourself. His testing doesn't mean you've done something wrong. It means he's revealing how he handles boundaries. Some men grow when faced with limits. Others crumble, manipulate, or retreat. Either way, your silence will make it clear. And that clarity, even if it hurts, is a gift. Because now you can see him as he truly is. So yes, he might test your boundaries, but the real question is not whether he tests them. It's how he responds when he realizes those boundaries will not move. When you stop talking to a man, the way he responds becomes a window into his character. Some will get defensive, some will test your boundaries, but a genuine man, one who values honesty, growth, and respect, will do something different. He will seek clarity. What does that look like? Instead of assuming, accusing, or blaming, he approaches with openness. He says, I notice you've pulled back. Can we talk about what's going on? He's not asking to manipulate you into breaking your silence, and he's not pushing you to explain yourself in a way that erases your boundary. He is genuinely trying to understand. Seeking clarity is an act of humility. It takes courage for a man to admit, I don't know everything and maybe I missed something important. It's easier to stay defensive, easier to deflect, easier to pretend he doesn't care. But the man who chooses curiosity over control is showing that he respects you enough to want to know your truth, even if it makes him uncomfortable. And here's where the difference lies. A genuine man is not looking for a loophole. He's looking for connection. He doesn't see your silence as a threat to his ego, but as a signal that something needs healing. Instead of saying, you're wrong for going quiet, he says, help me understand what this silence means because I don't want to lose what we have. This kind of man understands that relationships aren't about winning or losing. Silence is powerful, not just because it protects your peace, but because it exposes his truth. When you stop talking to a man, the wrong man won't use that silence to reflect or seek clarity. Instead, he will reveal who he really is. At first, this can feel painful. You may notice him respond with coldness, indifference, or even cruelty. He might say things like, I don't care if you don't talk to me, or do whatever you want. That's not strength. That's not independence. That's dismissal. And it speaks volumes about how little he valued your presence to begin with. The wrong man will use silence as an excuse to shift blame. He'll accuse you of being childish, dramatic, or manipulative. He won't ask why. He'll only point fingers. Why? Because accountability is too heavy for someone who has built his identity on avoidance. Sometimes the wrong man responds with games of his own. He mirrors your silence, not out of respect, but out of spite. He thinks, if she's not going to talk, then neither will I. But silence for him is not growth, it's punishment. It's about control. And in that moment, his true colors bleed through. Here's the gift in this, though it may not feel like one at first, your silence saves you time. It reveals much faster what might have taken years of words and explanations to uncover. Because when the wrong man is faced with your boundary, he doesn't rise, he crumbles. He doesn't lean in, he pulls away. He doesn't grow, he blames. And sometimes the hardest truth to accept is also the most freeing. If your silence causes him to retreat permanently, he was never invested in the first place. His love was conditional, his presence was convenient, his commitment was shallow, and now you can see it clearly. It takes courage to face this reality because a part of you may have hoped that silence would spark change, that it would open his eyes, but I'm silence doesn't wake a man up. It exposes the fact that he was never asleep. He was simply uninterested. And that's why silence is not just a boundary, it's a filter. It separates the ones who only wanted your presence from the ones who actually value your soul. The wrong man will show his true colors, and though it may hurt, it also liberates you. Because now you know his indifference, his blame, his withdrawal, they're not about you. They're about who he is. For so long, your words may have carried the weight of the relationship. You explained, defended, repeated, and reminded. You filled the silence with effort, and in doing so, you gave him the luxury of not noticing just how much energy you were pouring in. But when that stops, when the words dry up and you step back, the responsibility shifts. The silence forces him to respond to your absence instead of leaning on your presence. This is not about manipulation. It's about truth. Silence changes the dynamic because it interrupts old patterns. If you were always the one reaching out, he now has to decide if he will step forward. If you were always the one smoothing things over, he now has to decide if he values peace enough to protect it himself. And here's the deeper truth. Silence is not weakness. It is strength. Speaking can sometimes come from desperation. Please hear me. Please see me. Please understand me. But silence says, I will no longer beg for what I deserve. I will not keep handing over my energy where it is not valued. That shift is powerful because it places the choice in his hands. Will he rise to meet the silence with effort, honesty, and action? Or will he shrink, avoid, and disappear? Either way, the silence has done its job. It has forced him to reveal his priorities. It also recenters you. Instead of being consumed by his reactions, his moods, or his excuses, you reclaim your power. For by standing in stillness, you no longer chase, you no longer explain, you no longer fix. You simply allow the silence to do what words never could, reset the balance. And here's the beauty. There's a common misunderstanding about silence in relationships. Some people will tell you that when you stop talking, you're being manipulative, that you're playing games, that you're punishing him with withdrawal. But let's be clear, true silence, intentional silence is not punishment, it's protection. You're not going quiet to hurt him. You're going quiet to protect yourself, to reclaim the energy that has been drained by repeating the same words, the same explanations, the same pleas that have fallen on deaf ears. Silence is not cruelty, it's clarity. It's the decision to stop handing over pieces of yourself to someone who doesn't value them. Punishment is about control. Protection is about peace. When you choose silence, you are not trying to control his behavior. You are choosing to control your own boundaries. You are saying, I deserve better than to keep exhausting myself in conversations that go nowhere. I deserve to step back until I see respect, accountability, or change. And here's what makes this so powerful. Silence communicates what words cannot. It says, I will no longer fight for someone who won't fight for me. It